is Jeremy Davidson. I'm 21. I'm in my third year of marketing at Ryerson University. I converted to Islam about 2.5 years ago. It was relatively confusing at that time. I had come across many occasions where Islam was brought into my life, but I rejected it immediately. And it started when I was in high school, grade 12. There was a sister who wore the hijab, and I started asking her questions. My mom always told me it was oppressive, and I thought I'd ask her a few questions. I was pushing Christianity towards her, and she decided that she would just tell me a couple things about Islam, and every now and then she'd say something else about Islam. So I initially completely rejected it. There was no way I was going to convert to Islam. I went to church. I was the average white Canadian Christian boy. I went to youth group. I went to church on Sundays. So I was born in Canada, and my background many years back would have been German, Scottish, English, and Dutch. So I really don't know anything about my other heritage. I'm only Canadian as far as I'm concerned. Many different reasons, but the one reason that really brought me towards Islam is that it's the only religion that I could find where it's just you and God. There's nothing else in between. It's just you worshiping your Creator. I was raised within a Christian family, Protestant Baptist, and we were going to church on a regular basis, but since my parents got divorced when I was in grade 5, they had sort of fallen away from that, and my father still continued, but my mom didn't. And I had been trying to figure out which religion is most suited for me, not just suited for me, but which is the correct religion. So I had been looking for a religion where it was just you and God, with no intermediary, nothing in between. The summer before I converted to Islam, I was working for a guy in the summer who was a German, an elder guy who was moving, and he let me take some of his books that he had. So I picked up 2 books on Nazis, and one book was the Quran, which I brought home. I read a little bit of it, and then I set it aside. Because I looked at the titles, like in English, it translates to like the cow, and that seemed like a storybook to me, but you later understand what these titles actually mean, and that these titles weren't actually there at the time of the Prophet. So when I converted, it was September 29th of 2010. The summer before that, I had fasted for the month of Ramadan, just to see what it was like. I just wanted to experience what these Muslims were doing. I never went to the mosque during that time, but I was fasting from morning until night, no food or water, and that sort of got me slightly more interested. I had a copy of the Quran, which I previously mentioned, and I still never opened it at that point. But when I started going to university in 2010, I walked by a guy who was at Dundas Square every day handing out free copies of the Quran. So one day I walked by him, I asked for a copy of the Quran, I took it home, and it sat on my shelf. So later on, I kept walking by him every day. One day I walked by him, I got to school, and something was telling me I had to go back and talk to him. I don't know what it was, but something was telling me I had to go back to speak to this guy. So I ignored it, and I walked a little further, and it just felt so strong. I had to go back and talk to this guy and get these questions clarified I had about Islam, such as why women have to wear hijab, polygamy, terrorism, all these different aspects which people attribute to Islam, or that people don't understand about Islam. And I spoke to this guy for 3 hours in Dundas Square before I asked him how to convert to Islam. And at that moment, he told me how to recite the Shahada. And at that moment, I recited my Shahada. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. From then on, I didn't know anything about sects at that time, so when I was introduced to Islam, he was Salafi, so he started teaching me how to pray, And I later came to a Shiite Ithnashri mosque where I started going occasionally, and I would listen to the lectures on Fridays that they would have, and then I would go home, and all this was while my father had no clue I had converted to Islam. So it would be late at night that these lectures were held, and I told my father I was going out with a friend, so it was dark and I would get picked up in their car and head to the mosque. And that was several months before I finally decided to tell my father, after he decided to take me out for my first legal drink on my birthday, for my 19th birthday. And that's when I had to tell him that I don't drink anymore, and I had to tell him why I converted to Islam, and that Muslims, they don't drink alcohol, so I wouldn't be coming for my first drink. And since I converted, it's been very confusing back and forth between the sects, from Salafi to Shia, back to Sunni, following Hanafi, back to Shia. But it's been quite a long journey. I've been in many different mosques, talking to many different imams, Maulana. To clarify the questions, I've read through many books. I've read the Quran twice. I have been searching so much for what the true sect of Islam is. I know for sure that Islam is the truth, but it's finding the true Islam that is the struggle. So I've been searching to figure this out, and it's been quite a while of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, but inshallah, eventually I will find the truth and stick to the right path. Allahu Akbar.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen Rahmanir Rahim مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
The biggest change was most recently when, on Labor Day this year, my dad decided to kick me out, so I had to find my own place. And that's been a bit of a struggle just financially. So it's been many different things that have happened. My mom's become more supportive, even though she doesn't support Islam, she supports me more. The reason my father had kicked me out of the house, I came home from visiting my mom and my 4 sisters for 2 weeks during the summer. I came back and my dad wouldn't come over and say hi to my sisters. My mom said, okay, you're not even going to say hi to your own daughters? What is this? So she got out and he told my mom to get the F back in the van, and she got in not realizing that he said get in the van. So I got out and asked him what his problem is. How can you not even come over and say hi to your daughters who you haven't talked to in about 4 months? Your one daughter's pregnant, and you won't even say hi to them. I said, what kind of father are you? And he said, if you're going to talk to that, you can leave. So I probably didn't say the right thing at that time, but he just doesn't want anything to do with Islam. If I bring anything up at all, he tells me to be quiet, pretty much. And him and his girlfriend told me how dare I bring a cult religion into this house and all this stuff. They think I'm following a cult. I don't know why, but I've tried to explain to them certain things, and I said whenever I have anything to do with Islam, like if I'm going to pray or if I want to read the Quran or I'm going to the mosque, they're never around for anything like that. I said the different things were I don't want to be around people drinking alcohol, I don't like pork, I don't want any of this stuff. I said, you guys can still eat it, you guys can still drink it, you guys can still listen to music within the house, because it is your house after all, and if I don't want it, then I'll go somewhere else. It's not that big of a deal, but he just completely has turned the other way against me since I converted. So I've lived on my own since end of September. I moved out the day my dad told me to leave, so I lived with my aunt and uncle for about a month and then found a place up here, so it's a lot easier for school now.
So any struggles that I've had during this time for halal food, in the first while I didn't eat halal food because I didn't understand the reason behind it. Then when I decided to switch to eating only halal foods, I had still lived with my father, so it was very difficult. He didn't want to buy halal food, he didn't want to support the Muslims, which was his apparent reason. And I told him, if you don't want to buy halal meat, then I won't eat meat. It's not that big of a deal.
I definitely enjoy food. That's one thing I've always loved. And when I fast during Ramadan, the one thing my mom said was, I know you're serious about this because I know you love food and you're not eating the whole day. So if I was living with my family, I'd be eating all the time. Any of their foods, but just need to learn how to cook, that's all. Like I was saying, I used to drink in high school. Many of my friends, we all used to go out and party on the weekend, do whatever, just stupid things because of the alcohol, and use that as their excuse. But since I converted, and just a bit prior to that, I stopped drinking alcohol, and my life has never been better since. I don't think I would be in university right now if I kept drinking alcohol, because I did end up on academic probation after the first year, not due to drinking, but just due to laziness. And if I had the drinking aspect in there, there's no way I would have come back to university. And for my relations with other people, as soon as I announced on Facebook that I had converted to Islam, there were many people that day that had deleted me off of Facebook. And since then, there have been many more people that delete me off Facebook. I'd just like to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving me this opportunity to come to Islam. And I'm grateful for His guidance.